Great. Well, welcome everyone, and on this beautiful day. So we'll get on with the agenda so that we might even see some of it at the end. Uh, we've, with regard to apologies, there are quite a few. Councillors Bev Hopkins, Sandra Joy, Mike Day, Sarah Keaton, Adam Davis, and also an apology from Elizabeth Lee, who is one of our co-opted members. Are there any others? No. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Are there any disclosures of personal or prejudicial interests? Taking that as a no. Obviously, the prohibition of whip votes. And the next item on the agenda, the minutes of the previous meeting. That was on the 13th of February. It was the budget meeting. Could I have a proposer that they are a true record? There we are. That's Francesca, and seconder, Angela. Okay, great, thanks. And also, we've got a set of minutes for the visit to Maestero Pupil Referral Unit. And if I likewise could have a proposer and seconder for those as well, to note that visit. It's Francesca, and the seconder is Sue. Great, thank you very much.
I was going to ask if my apologies could be recorded. I spoke to you, Lyndon, before that meeting and said I had a meeting in the village.
Right, okay, we'll note that.
I wasn't there, so I can't second that. Okay.
Right, oh, great, thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the reply from Councillor Robert Smith to my letter. And can we note that, please? Okay, all right. Public question time. There are no public questions. So we immediately have to number item 7, which is not bad, taking all of about a couple of minutes. And that is education other than at school. An update and feedback from the site visit to the Maestero Pupil Referral Unit. And can I say to thank everybody concerned that we met at the unit, and also to everybody involved with organising it, and Helen, you and your staff, and Robert, who came along with us. It really was a fantastic visit, and we all learned an awful lot. Joy, who couldn't be with us today, Councillor Sandra Joy, sorry, couldn't be with us today, and she has sent in a list of questions which are included in the report. And Kate, do you want to, are you kicking off with this? Great.
Yeah, sure.
Welcome.
Okay, thanks. So is it helpful if I just talk through briefly the report first and then come to the questions? Is that okay? And you can take further questions if there are any.
Thank you.
So just obviously, I'm sure you've had an opportunity to read the report, but I'll just go through the kind of key highlights of it. So first of all, it's to outline the background to Maestero and how that came around. So it's the result of a 2016 Cabinet report. The intention of that report was to fully overhaul our EOTUS provision and that the PIU would significantly reduce its capacity over a period of time, because we intended and have devolved funding and responsibility to schools. And the purpose of that was that the needs of the majority of learners with social, emotional, behavioural difficulties would be met through their mainstream education, with only those with the most severe, the highest level of need being supported via the PIU. So the current EOTUS provision in Swansea includes Maestero PIU, which you've been to visit, but it is important to note that we do have other EOTUS provisions as well, particularly our home tuition service and our TVEDU provision. And we also devolve £700,000 to secondary schools, which is to support that principle that wherever possible, children should be retained in their mainstream setting and receive their education there. The important bit to note as well is that you probably will have noticed Maestero is our largest central provision, and it's also got the most significant amount of our budget share at just over 2.7 million. I think it's important to share with the committee that the needs of learners in Swansea have changed quite significantly since 2016, so since that report was first written. And we are at a point where we think it's necessary to review our current EOTAS offer to make sure that it's fit for purpose. So as I say, the current offer includes our home tuition service, which has a caseload of around 75 children. So that's quite a significant caseload for an area of work that has a much less significant budget allocation then. We've got our TVEDU provision, which is a specialist provision for children and young people who have a statement of special educational need. And we've also got the capacity in Maestera of 158, but it's currently at 127 pupils on roll. I know that there were some questions around that, so I'll share the answers to those in a moment. In terms of our kind of general issues, so why we think we need to review our provision at the moment. We know there's been an increase in referrals to the EOTAS provision for children and young people who are experiencing anxiety and emotionally based school avoidance. That's a national picture. It's not unique to Swansea by any stretch of the imagination, but it has seen an increase in the numbers within the T-Glass provision, which you saw when you visited. But it's also caused an increase to the home tuition caseload because some of those children and young people are struggling even to attend Maestera. We also know, and again, it's a national picture, that we've got an increase in the number of children and young people who are neurologically diverse. So sometimes for children who experience that diversity, they exhibit challenging behaviour as a response to their environment because those environments would be quite difficult for them to manage. The reintegration model that our PRU operates, that Maestera operates, isn't necessarily appropriate for those type of learners. And while it's a growing need, then we've identified that potentially that's a gap in our provision that we don't have and that we'd like to improve upon. Again, nationally, not unique to Swansea, but we know across Wales and indeed the UK, there's been an increase in the number of exclusions from school, and that's both permanent and fixed term exclusions. There's a raft of reasons for that, and certainly part of that is a response to the recovery from the pandemic. In Swansea, we're in a relatively good position, but we are very much of the belief that for every child who has an exclusion, that's one exclusion too many. So that's something that we really want to reduce. So we recognise the pressing need really to seek some more innovative solutions to current challenges and to promote engagement and inclusion. We know that budget pressures are significant. And we've put a significant investment into Maestera to operate as a PRU. It's been allocated the majority of funding for our EOTAS services, but because a PRU is not the appropriate provision to meet the needs of all of the learners requiring EOTAS provision, we do need to think about how we can perhaps rebalance the distribution of budget and also maximise the potential of the Maestera building, because you will have seen it's a very impressive setting, and our aspiration would be that that's accessible to as many children and young people as possible who need that. So in terms of what we've done to try and meet some of these challenges, we had a team around the PRU process, which I think we've reported previously to Scrutiny, and it was agreed as an outcome of that team around the PRU process that we would establish a means of providing bespoke education packages for those learners who were mainly in Key Stage 4, but who can't access the PRU provision as it's not appropriate to meet their needs. So we diverted £150,000 from the Maestera PRU budget to the pupil support team, and that team are now supporting and developing bespoke packages of support, both to prevent referral into the PRU, but also as an alternative arrangement should the point of referral be reached, but the PRU isn't the right provision. So this funding's been used to strengthen the work of the pupil engagement team, which are a part of the pupil support team. And they're focusing on reducing exclusions, promoting inclusion. And we have seen some impact of that permanent exclusions are decreasing and our fixed term exclusions are beginning to plateau. There's a lot more work to be done. We don't think it's, finished by any stretch of the imagination, but we are beginning to see some impact of that. Also, following the success of TVEDU, so that's that small provision for children with statements of additional learning needs, we've got plans to provide a similar provision in the primary sector, and work is being completed at Cloyd Primary School, who'll be able to provide provision from September 2023 for primary age learners who have behavioural difficulties as a consequence of their additional learning need, and so can't be accommodated in my stair room. We've finalised our inclusion strategy, and it's awaiting cabinet approval. That will be hopefully in place next month, and that outlines 5 key priorities in relation to provision for vulnerable learners, and one of those is securing sufficient specialist places to meet the challenging demand in learner need. So there's a further priority in there around supporting emotional health and well-being. And both of those priorities are intended to address some of the current pressures on finding appropriate placements for children and young people who find it challenging to engage with education, either as a consequence of an additional learning need or emotional health and well-being issues. We're also in the process of undertaking a resetting, rebalancing exercise around our specialist teaching facilities, and that work will support schools to further create inclusive learning environments to meet the needs of all learners wherever possible. So we're really focusing on strengthening that. This work should also increase and enhance provision for learners with autism, and we aim to include increased specialist support for social, emotional and behavioural difficulties within the remit of this work as well. So I prepared a cabinet report which is looking to seek permission to evolve the provision for EOTIS in Swansea, so to move into the next kind of phase. While the recommendations of the 2016 cabinet report have set the direction of travel for Maestero, we know that the needs of children and young people have changed, and so we have to adapt and flex our provision. So really to conclude that, in Swansea, we've developed a whole school approach to promoting inclusion, with many schools developing really innovative approaches to supporting children and young people with social, emotional, behavioural difficulties. However, we do recognise the increasing demand, the increasing need, and also the decreasing budget. So we have to maximise our available resources and amend and adapt and innovate accordingly. So the significant investment in Maestero building has been absolutely critical in improving our PRU provision, and I hope that was really noticeable. But there is a clearly stated remit for a PRU, and Swansea needs to extend its EOTIS provision to be able to meet the needs of all learners, because that remit can't support all of our learners, and we have to achieve it from the existing budget envelope. So that's the challenge. So the forthcoming paper to cabinet will allow us to review the current provision, and then we'll formalise that into a more comprehensive review and redesign to be undertaken. So in terms of the report, that kind of concludes it. But I know there were some supplementary questions. I don't know if you want me to pause for questions now and then take.
Well, thank you, Chair. I think Kate has summarised things very well there in terms of the current provision was set up as a result of a cabinet report in 2016. What is important is that we don't see any provision as cast in tablets of stone. That things needs change, society changes. It's not just due to the pandemic. We know when you're dealing with children and young people that needs will change over a short period of time, and I think it needs a response from us that is sufficiently flexible and a system that meets the needs of the learners as the group of learners that we are working with now. So I think without preempting the report that goes to cabinet, there will be reforms there to the way the system works, and hope the design and the principle is that we will harness the capacity. We've got the excellent facility in Maestero, that will be used to support a broader work across all schools, and that will be increasing capacity that way.
Great, thank you. Helen, do you want to?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, for me, it's about improving the accessibility really to the current fantastic resource we've got in Maestero. That's absolutely key. But we do have financial constraints, and it's really important that we make the most of the money we have. And the efficient use of that resource, that entity in Maestero, is absolutely important. The questions that have been received by scrutiny members so far, I know Councillor Joy is not with us tonight, but some of those questions are very pertinent. And they will give us further impetus really to examine the efficiency of Maestero. So I'm grateful for any questions really from scrutiny, because they will help us form our report to Cabinet in, I think, June time. We hope to take that to Cabinet. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. We were, I think all of us who visited Maestero were highly impressed and, with the work that was going on there and the unit as well. You mentioned that Councillor Sandra Joy had submitted some questions. She can't be with us today, but you've given a written reply to those. So I think we can take those as written, if as read, if that's okay by you. But are there any questions from anybody else? I can't see any. Yes, we can. It's James.
Yeah, just to reiterate what the chair was saying, thanks to all the staff in particular for staying to escort us around, and in particular I was struck by the positive attitude, particularly of those who'd been physically injured by their pupils. But I just wanted to Councillor Joy's questions are excellent and actually cover an awful lot of the bits that I would have wanted. The only thing I just wanted to query is how you're looking at the flexibility. I know this is addressed in the questions where you've got an awful lot of spaces in the Key Stage 3 provision, but an awful lot pending. Now, I know in the answers you do state that you're expecting that cohort to move into Key Stage 4, so that problem to change, but it seems an awful shame to have such a fantastic facility with such a large number of spaces that can't be redistributed in some way. I don't know if this fits into the planning that you're already considering.
Kate.
Thanks. Yeah, no, exactly that, really. I think what we've got, as you've seen, is a very clear structure in Maestero at the moment, but it doesn't necessarily always flex according to need. And we need to, as part of that review, build in that responsive, flexible approach so that we can respond to need as it emerges, and quite quickly and quite responsively. So really, we're looking at developing a very child-centred approach whereby we look at the individual children and young people in front of us and what their needs are, and build the provision around them at the point in time, rather than trying to fit children into a provision where there may be space available and then not enabling them to have that provision if the space is not available. So we need to look more creatively at our waiting list, our pending list, or perhaps even earlier when children are in school, but kind of, indicating that perhaps things aren't going quite the direction we hoped, how we can get in as quickly as possible to provide those early and preventative services.
Great, thank you. Is that do you need to come back, James? What, happy with that?
Yeah, no, I'm happy. Thank you. Yeah,
good.
Great facility, and well done to everyone.
Great. Councillor Yvonne Jardine. Yvonne.
Thanks, Chair. Okay, thanks for the report, and I'm sort of quite aware of the work that's been done as Maestero, and I appreciate, everything costs and that it's very child-centered. But I was wondering, I'm not sure if I missed this, but how involved are the parents or parent or guardian? Because sometimes I think we need to have a bit of a holistic approach that doesn't just deal with the problem that's actually in front of you, but maybe what's causing it. So I just wonder, do we have anything to do with the parents? How involved are the needs of the parents, not just having them involved?
Great, Kate.
Thank you. Yeah, certainly it's really critical and something that is part of the current offer, but also something that we can strengthen going forward. So under the current offer, There's a support worker team whose specific role is to work with the families. So it's a family approach rather than just the individual child. I think that we have a team of 8 support workers in Maestero at the moment. And again, something we would like to see is the facility to extend that further to reach more families, and particularly, for example, those who are on our waiting and pending list. And again, how we engage with families when children are still in school, but perhaps tipping into that arena of perhaps disengaging, perhaps finding things very difficult. The support that we can put together for parents and families at that stage is really critical. The work that we do in partnership with Child and Family Services and with other partner organisations, for example, the Youth Justice Service, we link quite closely with our health colleagues, with Bernardo's and so on, is really critical in terms of wrapping support around. So it is absolutely child-centred, but we recognise as part of that is the child's wider network as well. So yes, thank you for the question. It's important that you ask, and it's important for us too that we develop that further.
Sorry, Sharon, and if I can just come in, I think what Yvonne has described there is what we're aiming for, what the system is aiming for. It's working with the individual child or young person, and working engaging with the hinterland as well, and that's essential if we're going to achieve what we're trying to achieve.
Okay, great. Thank you, Robert, and thank you, Kate. Any other questions? Yeah.
Hiya. With the neurodiversity stuff on the increase, and obviously the waiting list being problematic, what's the links like with the health boards to sort of, support extra resource in the NHS, I suppose, for screening and things like that?
Thank you. Yeah, it's really challenging in terms of NHS waiting lists. We are part of an education directorate as part of the regional autism strategy, and that's a really important programme board that looks at exactly some of those issues, so how we can kind of influence that change. Most recently, for example, there's been some additional funding diverted from that board into the NHS to try and reduce the waiting lists on the ND pathways. But I think as well as what's really critical is that we have to take responsibility for what we can control. We haven't got control over the waiting lists, but we have got control over our school environments, over the setting in Maestero, for example, over the work that we can offer to support families. So diagnoses are important and really necessary for some families at certain points, but also there's a lot that we can do without that diagnosis, and a lot that we can do to make sure those really inclusive school communities can celebrate and promote that inclusion and make sure that children and young people have the best opportunities to progress. And that's about how we change the environment and the ethos, really.
Great. Thank you very much. Any other questions to Kate? Yes, Councillor Angela O'Connor.
Yes, just to say that I thought it was a brilliant visit actually when we went, and I was interested also when we were there in all the support that was in place for the children's families, as I asked it then at the time, and I was pleased to hear what they all had to say. And just also, I know that we talked about, sorry, the children in the garden. Kate, we had a little chat, didn't we, about the ADHD and the waiting lists. I know you touched on it briefly then as well. Obviously, it seemed to be feedback from the school that was sort of imperative to the diagnosis to getting the right medication so that they can move forward. Are we any further with that? Or?
Thanks. Yeah, that's part of that work that I just described in terms of that regional partnership group. You're right. That's an important point, because the difference there with that specific diversity is that medication can in some cases be really beneficial, and so we've raised that via our regional autism board, and the health board are considering that. It's a difficult one for us because it doesn't fall within our control or remit, but we're certainly making those representations, and I think it's really critical that we continue to do so. The health board are very mindful as well of their desire to reduce that waiting list.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Any other questions? No. Well, Kate, thank you very much. And if you could pass on our thanks to the head and staff at Maestero, because we were impressed, and you know, with the work that they did there. And as Councillor Robert Smith said, it is a moving feast and a moving story, really, and so it should be. But thank you very much. Great. The next item on the agenda is hearing the voices of children and young people. And can I welcome Sarah, who is going to lead on this? Sarah.
Lovely, thank you. Yeah, so I'll just briefly sort of just talk you through the report. Hopefully you'd have had the opportunity to sort of read through the detail. So that sort of listening to the voices of children and young people is something that's been important to the local authority for a long time, and lots of different directorates undertake this work in different ways. So the Education Directorate doesn't do this alone. We work closely with the partnership and involvement team, which are based in the Social Services Directorate, and they work quite closely with schools and in the community to facilitate opportunities for listening to learner voice. So prior to the pandemic, we used to hold events, for example, the Big Conversation, which had large numbers of children and young people in attendance. And so we're currently working now at how we take those opportunities forward post pandemic, where that hasn't taken place since. However, that team has been out to schools and also held events in the community, and in the appendices there's been some examples of what those opportunities were, but that's just a selection of them. There were quite a number more that took place. I think it's really important to highlight the Swansea Pupil Voice Manifesto, which was presented to full council in 2022 in July. And we followed up this with a Universal Children's Day event, which was a lovely event in the Waterfront Museum in November. And part of it was to respond to their query at the end of their manifesto, which was like they would want to hear some responses to some of the things that they felt that were really important to them. So we undertook a piece of work where it wasn't just what you said we did, we extended that to we will do, because obviously there are some things that take longer than a few months to action, but that was shared with directorates, every single directorate in the local authority, and there were a number of areas that responded to that. And so that day was really beneficial because they got some feedback on some of the areas of priority to them and where we'll be taking it next, and that will also inform some of the future work we'll do them to keep them informed on the progress of some of those things. But they also shared with them how they'd like to be communicated with, because I think one of the things that was really important was how do we best engage with them and for them to tell us, really. So we collated quite a bit of information from there to help us shape our settings going forward. So in addition to that, obviously schools undertake their own learner voice activities. So all schools have school councils, and they meet on a regular basis. So I've covered. And then there is quality assurance and monitoring via the school improvement team. And again, in the appendices were some examples of how they engage with learners to listen to their views through that. So in addition to learners who are in our compulsory education, there is post-16 learner voice. And actually Dave Borden is here on another agenda item, but he's been leading on this. So it might be worth you just sharing how that's gone, because there's been a really positive response to the survey.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Would you like to sort of come in and David, yeah, and perhaps then Robert and Helen before we go to questions? So thanks.
Yeah, of course. So the post-16 questionnaire, the survey that's currently been undertaken by sixth forms, we're extending that as well to the college. So we're going to get an oversight of all post-16 provision across the city by the end of that survey. That survey is running until the 2nd of June, so it gives another half term and the half term break as well for young people to respond to that. as a result of that, then we will have some outcomes that we can look at and we can develop with that. Currently, to date, we've had over 300 responses from young people, so we're very encouraged by the support that schools have given to it. There was a bit of an exercise where I went into schools and we talked with the head teachers and the senior leadership teams about the importance of the survey and gathering the learner voice in our post-16 settings, schools and settings. And we've had a very encouraging response from that as well. And the survey itself is a response to an Eston recommendation from last year, which asked us to review post-16 education to make sure that it meets the needs of our young people. So as a result of that, we are looking at a whole broad a range of different things to do with post-16, in particular the amount of choice that a young person has when they finished compulsory schooling and move into the post-16 sector. So very encouraging so far. The outcomes of that survey then will come after June the 2nd.
Thank you very much, and very good response. And that survey was to just post-16, was it?
Currently, it's just the survey, the questionnaire itself is just post-16, yes.
Yeah, and you put 300 responses,
300,
was, I think, very good.
Yeah, very pleased.
You could teach a few lessons to other areas in the council where we've heard the responses were very much less. So that is excellent. Robert, Helen, if you want to come in.
Just want to thank Sarah and Dave for presenting the report and the work that's gone into this. As Sarah said, this is about capturing the voices of children and young people at various levels, at a school level, or for us doing it at a council level, and adopting a whole council approach in responses isn't something that just sits within education or within social services. It needs to be addressed by all directorates within the council who've got their role to play in responding, in taking on board what children and young people are telling us. Sometimes it won't be possible to deliver things overnight. We appreciate that. There are things that may well take longer. They're part of a developmental process. But the important thing is that what can be done is done, and that their views are helping to shape the way Swansea moves forward in future.
Thank you, Robert. Helen, do you want?
Yeah, just to add really, and to echo some of those comments, we can't underestimate the voices of our young learners in Swansea. I had the privilege with a cabinet member of engaging with school councils, albeit on Teams, as we came out of the pandemic. And it was quite a revelation. The mature voices, the thinking, the concepts they talked about blew us away. But more importantly, they were very strong advocates for little voices, smaller voices, the marginal voices really, of their peers within their schools. So they were very much representing a range of voices in terms of the diversity within their school as well, which was obviously there's positive kind of discrimination in the sense that school council members really are chosen from a diverse group of pupils as well. But it was really pleasing to hear that. And in taking this forward, I think the relationship with the Education Directorate and the participation team within the council is important because it's strong. It builds on the curriculum for Wales. So when we think about the new curriculum that we have in Wales, there is a strong emphasis on pupil engagement and participation in the choice of how they learn and what they learn. And I think that's really important in terms of shaping their citizenship as well, as citizens of Swansea and the world in the future. So this work, while it may seem, an additional kind of layer of work, I think it's vital. It's so important because they have so much to tell us, and what they tell us should inform our planning. So really good work.
Great, thank you all. I must say I actually got a copy of the Pupil Manifesto in front of me, and it was highly impressive when they came along to full council and actually presented that. And I was equally pleased as well because obviously in my in my ward, the school, the Bishopston Comprehensive School, I knew the head boy and girl, and I do engage with them. And I think every councillor right across where you've got a school, it's really important that you do engage. We all have that duty to do that and to ask and make sure they're listened to. And I think that's important. Sorry,
You know,
Robert.
a lot of us were in that presentation in the council chamber, and I think the confidence, the maturity which those young people showed in coming to that meeting, and being able to present and articulate their views as they did is a tribute to the young people we have in Swansea.
Question I asked before I open it up to questions. One of the things in the manifesto was something that we talked about in an earlier sort of scrutiny meeting, and that was safety and sexual harassment and so on. And they were wondering, they said, yeah, where do we, what do we do in that situation, and where do we get help? And I know that we talked about the fact that they would be a teacher in a school who they could contact in each of the schools, but maybe reading that, has that changed? And that really been highlighted, because they highlighted that within their manifesto, and it would be quite good to make sure that we know and have confidence that they do know a person to contact in the event of something like that happening. And
it's a very important question, Chair, and I think we've got a report coming back to scrutiny in the next few months, haven't we, on that sexual harassment and who can they turn to. But I think the exposure that's been in the press at a national level and indeed at a local level, and the scrutiny around it from Estin as the inspectorate asking our schools what they're doing, I think it's raised the profile of this important matter, and a matter that's maybe been hidden, and an assumption has been made that there's always been somebody they can talk to, but there is stigma and there is fear sometimes. So we've created an action plan, and hopefully when we bring it back to scrutiny in the next few months, you'll be able to see how we've enhanced and strengthened our procedures.
Great, thank you very much. Now then, any questions, anyone? Let's see. Oh yes, we can. Councillor Sue Jones.
Thank you, Lyndon. Just wondered if we could be kept updated on the survey when it's completed in June, to make certain that we're aware of some of the issues.
Certainly, Councillor Jones. I think the outcomes of that survey will be very interesting. The whole point of the survey is to support our planning so we can plan better kind of curriculum offer post-16 for our learners. So looking forward to seeing the results, and definitely we'll share the outcomes with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? For the look of it, no. Can I thank Sarah and David, for your contributions there, and for the work that you've done. Really important, and as I say, a great response to that survey for the over 16s, and it's so important to know that they've got a voice as well, and I think that is so vital. So thank you very much. The next item on the agenda, well, it's back to the David show, actually. It's the Swansea Skills Partnership. I'm quite keen on this because it was, and Councillor Robert Smith, when he was in another life as chair of the Policy Development Committee, it was a policy that we developed actually and put forward, and it was adopted by Cabinet. So be very keen to hear what you've got to say, and I hopefully have a few questions afterwards. David.
Yeah, so the report I put together, I'll just talk through the report a little bit like the previous speakers. There you go. Yeah. So the Swansea Skills Partnership has been an established and effective partnership that has run for a good number of years now, and through the times where the impact of COVID was felt the greatest as well, with the aim to make Swansea one of the best places to be educated in Wales, and supporting the wellbeing objective that every child and young person in Swansea gains the skills and the qualifications that they need to succeed in life. So as a partnership, we meet regularly. The membership covers, as you know, representation from schools, from the directorate, from our local colleges within the local authority and surrounding, and our higher education partners, and various other education partners like Careers Wales, the Regional Learning Skills Partnership, for example, as well, sit on that board. Well attended meetings, and a good range of different discussions developed from that. We were very pleased as well that Eston recognised the Swansea Skills Partnership as part of their report as an effective partnership to bring together a number of different educational partners from the region, and aligning our thought process with the regional priorities as well. So from the partnership, what we've done and what the partnership has done together is focus on 5 clear work streams, which are highlighted in the report itself. Some of those work streams now have come to fruition, and we've seen progress and traction with those work streams, and some of those actions have been completed and have been established into other strategies within the education department, namely the vocational strategy, the vocational education strategy itself. So they've matured over the years, and we currently have asked members of that partnership to suggest further work streams for September that we can focus and look on. The time within the partnership has not been without its challenges, and I think during COVID, particularly the impact of that on the various education institutions and organisations was felt, and it was very useful then to have that partnership available for different partners to be able to discuss and talk through different issues that were affecting them during that time. We've also had considerable staff changeover within various organisations, and as well as that, certain funding streams, the European funding and the Shared Prosperity Fund, changing and evolving over time. So what I've done within the paper is to look in particular at each of the 5 work streams and give a little bit of a focus on those to see where we're at within different work streams. And of course, underpinning all of this is the Swansea-based city deal, and the fact that during our time as a partnership, the Skills and Talent Initiative work stream of the city deal has become, was officially launched in April 2022 last year, and now that funding has become available for partners and for us as a region to look at and to use in that way. So the work streams, I won't talk through them in too much depth because they're in the report itself, but we've been very pleased that, for example, within the digital work stream, to establish some firm relationships with Swansea University and Technocamps, the DVLA with their coding challenge, Amazon with the links there with the digital, which has been very good and very exciting. With our work stream 2, the advice, information and guidance, through the establishment of the partnership, what we've been able to do is put together a robust strategy for vocational education, 14 to 19-year-olds, and we've got a network for careers and work-related experience, which began last year. And we'll have another meeting towards the end of this year where school teachers are able to share the good practice that exists within schools and the links that they've made with different employers, for example. We recognise Careers Wales as a key partner within that work stream, and Careers Wales will often present to the partnership on the work that they are doing with our local schools and how that links as well with other education providers. Work stream 3, Swansea's UNESCO Learning City, has gathered traction. The lead on that is a lady, Judith James from Swansea University, and there's further information in the report. And then I think last time we met, which was last year, last time there was an update, we talked about the NEETs Prevention Partnership, which was another subgroup of the Swansea Skills Partnership, which meets bi-monthly and works around the youth engagement and progression framework. And then finally, work stream 3, which really is a work stream that has matured, was looking at the response that we had to COVID at the time. And it was really useful at the time where we were able, as a partnership, to share best practice in terms of blended learning, and also to bring together a calendar of transition activities and taster sessions, and get some reassurances from Welsh Government regarding Qualifications Wales and the ongoing arrangements there. And then finally, just to say that the partnership continues to be strengthened and continues to grow. We recently had our NEAT figure released for Swansea, which is 1.9% and below the Welsh average of 2.1%, which we are very encouraged about, because we believe that it's from partners working together and the collaborative effort of everybody around the table able to make sure that our young people are given those opportunities within the different institutions.
Just remember to press that. Thank you very much. Robert, Helen, do you want to come in before we go?
Yeah, just again to thank Dave for his contribution. You're quite right. I was chair of the PDC when we discussed this, and I think we had great ambitions for the skills partnership, and I think it is beginning to fulfill that the intention for it. But it's just the beginning, because the partnership needs to develop its own momentum, its own impetus in addressing the issues that are within its remit. And I think what David described there is the key steps that at the start of a process. We want this to continue. We want to build on this. And I think bringing people together within the partnership, getting them around the board, and getting those conversations, that building that confidence in each other, that's going to be crucial moving forward.
Thank you. Just to echo the Cabinet members' comments in terms of why we have a partnership, it really is about future occupations, whether that's employability through engaging with our employers, or it could be a future occupation, and enterprise for learning, or learning for enterprise, I should say, is very important, because we see that not all our learners have the same sets of skills. They may have certain skills that are that they appeal to employers, but they also have some entrepreneurial skills themselves, and we want to develop that in our learners as well. So we need to recognise really that our cohorts of learners in Swansea are all different, but do they have opportunities within our region, within the city, and indeed beyond that, to make a good fist really of gaining suitable employment or a suitable occupation in the future. And I'm very encouraged, really. I've been part of the partnership for the last 5 years, and I can see it has evolved into something. Yes, we had a pandemic, but we really have a good set of partners working together to support that ethos, that we can support the destinations of our learners. And that's what education is about, isn't it? It's that holistic view of education. So I'm encouraged that as we enter the next phase of the partnership and take on some new strategic priorities that very much are aligned to the Regional Learning and Skills Partnership agenda. They published their action plan in around December 2022. So there's some fertile ground for us there to build on our next strategic priorities to make sure that Swansea is a fantastic place to learn, but also to live and to have that suitable occupation or employment.
Great, thank you, Helen. Can I open that to questions? I've got a few, but I'm sure we'll have perhaps a few. Well, shall I kick off with one or two? But I think one of the great benefits of it, as we found during the pandemic, was building up that digital capacity and making sure that we were able to give computers out to people, and so that they had, or Chromebooks or whatever it was. I can remember buying some from my community fund, some Chromebooks to give out to people, and I think it was so important. So that was it was quite timely, really. We weren't thinking of a pandemic when we thought about that, but it was in place, and it was a great benefit. I was speaking to another county council, actually, it was an English county council, and what they were saying with computers, because we were buying new stuff and sending out, but what they were doing is asking people if they had computers that they were no longer using, some laptops and that sort of thing. And where they were sometimes older, they were getting one of the schools to actually take those apart and sell the parts as well. And it was actually giving them an income. And I don't know if we do that, but it might be a thought. But that was an interesting model where they actually got the school involved in taking those apart and getting selling that stuff. So there's that. One of the drivers when we were talking about this a long time ago, I think, Robert, this skills partnership was with the city deal on the horizon, and really to create jobs that allowed people to have a good, well-paid job and stay in Swansea if they so wished. If they want to move away, that was fine. But the driver really was to make sure that we could get good, well-paid jobs in Swansea. And I always see education as a journey to work and life. And therefore, it's not just what you do, you know, until about 16 or 18. So one of the things that I haven't heard, and one of the things I was keen to happen, is that we got more business involved, and business leaders involved with this, because I think it's quite important, because they are the ones that really create the jobs that pay for everything we do. Without them, we couldn't have any of this. So it's really important that those are really in the driving seat, and we need to have a look at getting, and if we're not, we need to get some of those really involved, because as I say, they are the ones that pay for everything, and they can encourage people to, you know, get into careers with their companies. David, is it?
Yes, absolutely, you know, agree completely. And each of our partners within the Swansea Skills Partnership have their own links with people within business, which are often brought to the table. So we were able to discuss there the business community as well. In terms of schools and within education, Careers Wales, as you know, is our body that we would use with our link with our partners. It's been very encouraging to hear that they have a valued partner project where every school is linked to a particular valued business partner within the community, or a bit broader. So we work alongside them as well, which has been very encouraging. And then we've had some local businesses, for example, Amazon, have come to present to us as a skills partnership to talk about their work that they can do within schools itself. But yeah, completely take on board that the links that we have with businesses and with the industry and with our local area is a real area in which we can develop in the future.
And I think what Dave has said, what's going on, and I think things are improving. Do we need to do more? Yes, we do. Do we need a more systematic approach? Yes, probably we do. We do need a more systematic approach. We need to get a lot closer dialogue between us and local employers to see what the skills needs are, and also to make sure that our young people are able to access the opportunities that are there. I think too much of it is occasional conversations, people pick things up and run with them. Fine, that's fine. But I think we need to get a lot more focus on how we do that. And it is an ongoing challenge, but it's something that we are committed to doing.
Thanks, because there are businesses out there, as you know, in your ward, Robert, now, I think Lacha, isn't it? Yeah. I'm thinking of, there's a company there that produces, stuff for Rolls-Royce aero engines. Who'd have believed that in a small place like Lacha? And I can remember meeting some young people in one of the hubs in Swansea, and they'd had a huge investment from an American company into their animation company. And, gosh, these are people we need to get it out there into schools, because they will encourage those children and pupils in school to say, gosh, and have a can-do attitude that they can do it. And but there's a lot of business out there like that are quite innovative and businesses that look to the future. And I think those are the ones really we want to get people involved with and get them involved with us, because they'll create those jobs and that will give people a real good wage to stay in Swansea. We've all chosen to stay in Swansea. We like Swansea. Robert and I have been round about, I've been round a bit longer than Robert, but we've been around for 100 years. You know, we love Swansea, but you know, we want other people to have that, but also have a really good wage and a good salary in a future that they don't need to look to move if they don't want to, and they shouldn't have second best. So we really, and you've come a long way, I have to say. It's really good. And the whole idea of the thing in the first place, because we talked about it for a long time to create this, I think is really important, but we need to go that mile there, as Robert rightly said. It's a moving feast, and we need to do that to make sure we got those links with business. And I can see we've got Francesca with a hand up now.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry if you hear children screaming in the back, and I've got the doors open and the children are playing outside. So if you're hearing screaming, that's what it's about. I think it's a really good point that we should be working closely with businesses, and I think it's great that the Cabinet members said that we can always do more, because I don't think we should ever be satisfied. We should always be continuing to push boundaries. But I think another area of business that is largely only sort of relied upon in employment when they come to university, and that's the hospitality industry. And that's a real skill there. There's a lot of places in Gower, in Mumbles, where, you know, they're very short staffed there, and some of them are very well paid jobs, but they're just not capturing them at the right age. And I think that's really important that we show the hospitality industry, because for Gower, for example, that is the backbone of the community, and we need to make sure that it is an attractive vocation to go into. And sometimes it seemed as though it's not well paid, but it is, you know, if you go for the good companies. So I think it's really important that we work closely with businesses. And if I can push towards the hospitality industry, I know there's a lot of local businesses that would jump at the opportunity to help with training.
Okay.
And don't forget, there's ourselves that are involved here. Gower College are certainly involved. There's a whole range of partner organisations that need to be working together to push this agenda at an early stage within each child and young person's school journey.
Sorry, we can't hear anything.
No, I can't either. I don't know.
Sue, sorry, my fault. Sue, do you want to ask a question?
Well, really, it's not a question. I was heartened to recently being contacted about work experience for a youngster who wanted a connection into a local establishment. And I thought maybe that was old-fashioned, but to me that was a great initiative going back years when work experience was encouraged in schools to go and find the opportunities out there. And just a commentary that I'd been contacted within the last week regarding that.
Great, thanks, Sue. That was and Beth.
Just ask the previous item about the survey. Are there questions in the survey that would feed into this?
Yeah, some of the questions will feed in about aspirations and choice, and having that broad understanding of pathways and where qualifications lead. Mm-hmm.
What I'd say about Sue's point as well in terms of work experience, the key thing there is meaningful engagement with employers, and the word meaningful is important there. You know, it's pointless putting people. It'll put young people off if they have a poor experience, and it's making sure that these things are planned, that everyone on both sides, the young person and the employers taking them on, are serious about giving them something worthwhile when they're with them. And I think that's the key.
Absolutely. Thank you, Robert.
Can I just mention the NHS as well? Obviously, the recruitment issues within the NHS. Are we kind of looking at them as a, potential employer to get kids into, healthcare career pathways as well?
Okay, great, fine, thank you. Are there any other questions? If not, can I say thank you, David, and to Robert and Helen, that, this is something, as I say, is a moving feast, really important work that is being done around it. And as I say, we've got more to do, as always, but really important and encouraged by a lot of that progress. Great, thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is to note it's the feedback from the Partneriaeth Scrutiny Councillor Group. This Partneriaeth replaced, as you know, ERU, and Helen is the lead director for that, and our chief executive is the lead chief executive as well. If anybody's got any questions, but otherwise, if you'd like to note the two reports, what we have asked at the next, the chair of it, Councillor Darren Price, will be attending our next meeting, and we've asked him for a comparison from ERU into the new Partneriaeth and what the differences are. And all the evidence coming forward is all the lessons have been learned from ERU and have been taken forward into Partneriaeth. And I think that is so important. So I don't know if anybody's got any comment, but otherwise we'll move on. Okay, we'll move on. And the final item on the agenda is the work programme. That hasn't changed, so if we could note that. Unless anybody's got any questions on the work programme. Could I? Yes,
Chair,
we have.
sorry, can I just clarify one point on the work programme?
Yeah.
In the new municipal year, there's item 2 there in June, new curriculum for Wales update. Is that a verbal report, or just would you like a written report, really? Just a little bit more clarity on what's required.
To be honest, a verbal report would be fine.
Okay.
I don't want to create lots of extra work for you. So coming along, a verbal report is fine if that will be easier for you.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that the officer who bought the original report wrote quite a comprehensive report. So are there any aspects in terms of update that you want in particular, or just a general update because it's been implemented this year?
Yeah, I think a general update to see where we are with it.
That's fine, thank you.
But we don't want to create work, for you. You've got enough to do, but it is obviously an important area. Great. If there aren't any other questions, can I thank everybody for attending and for your contributions, and to thank Michelle for organising it. Thank you all very much, and see you soon.